2020. It's now 19 minutes to 7 o'clock, and I want us to join Honorable Martha Karua, who is speaking to us live from Nairobi. Good morning, Honorable. How are you keeping in these times of coronavirus?
I'm keeping well and getting used to a slowed down life.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine. And so that as we start on the state of the nation, on the cases that you're seeing so far, how it has affected the country. Of course, today is the 47th day of the pandemic since the first case was reported on the 13th of March 2020. What can you make of the journey that has been and how life has changed in this country?
I think life has been uncertain. It's a time of anxiety, because nobody knows when this is going to end, and nobody is sure how everything is going to turn out.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that there is now a sense of expectation since the government started a journey towards resumption to normalcy with the opening of the hotels,
Mm-hmm.
partial opening. That at least gives a sense that there is thinking of moving towards normalcy. But the good thing about what has been happening is that people have now started adopting and using new methods, including this interview.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We have seen the court giving judgments,
Mm-hmm.
utilizing the time to give judgments and rulings that have been pending.
Mm-hmm.
But we need this scaled up so that we see the pending cases where people are in custody, like murder cases, economic crime cases going on.
Mm-hmm.
We need disputes being resolved that cannot necessarily be resolved through electronic means.
Mm-hmm.
So we need, all sectors need to start preparing, configuring. How can we return to normalcy while having safety measures
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that we do not again have a resurgence of the virus,
Right.
or increase the rate of infection here.
Mm-hmm. Honorable, we are losing you from the image. Maybe you can just reposition yourself so that we have a better focus in as far as we speak to you from Nairobi. And I want us now to focus on, of course, we've seen some scale down of operations. If you look at the National Assembly, we see a situation where only 53 members are allowed to sit at a given time. At the judiciary, we've seen that actually most of the hearings proceedings are to be conducted remotely. How does this affect the workings? Because you've been at the National Assembly, you're also an advocate, you practice, I believe. So how has this affected operations, and do you think we can maximize on justice at such times?
I think it is possible to reimagine and reconfigure new ways of doing things. And this is what we are all called upon to do. We commend the judiciary for what they have done so far, but we need more thinking to go into it, in consultation with the stakeholders, lawyers, and others, so that new ways can come up. We have seen some judicial officers having court hearings outside for safety measures.
Mm-hmm.
Can we imagine reduced traffic within the courts?
Right.
And a bit more of normalcy? And this is what we are called upon even in government offices. I've been wondering, the Jubilee administration talked of 24-hour economy for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
How about actualizing it and having employees go in shifts? This way you avoid crowding, you encourage social distancing. How about mass testing? So that if you are telling people to go back to work, just like we are telling the hotels, you get people tested. That way you ensure that you are not escalating the rate of infection.
Mm-hmm.
I think we really have to reimagine. And in Kenya, I'm quite worried that the testing in private facilities,
Right.
they are capping it at 10,000 and upwards. We need to be imaginative and to bring cheaper testing. Burkina Faso is reported to have testing that is costing less than $1.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we need, so that even smaller establishments can afford to have their employees tested.
Right.
As it is, very few establishments will be able to get mass testing for employees when it's pegged at such a high rate.
And of course, we have heard that part of the protocols of reopening restaurants and eateries is that all employees or operators will have to be tested before they can do that work. So it's a valid point that you raised there. So as we talk about the measures that have been taken by the government, there has been a cry that the mandatory quarantine that people have to be taken through, it's too expensive for those being taken there. When it comes to treatment, the patients have to pay for themselves. What do you think is the right thing to do at a time that it's not known how many people will fall victim to the virus?
I think we take a day at a time, and at the stage we are in, from where I sit, the government must put the treatment of those who are sick, especially if they're in government facilities. Those who work for private facilities can make their own arrangements. I think when we're trying to prevent a contagion, the government really must take the responsibility. And then again, the government was getting ready to roll out universal health care. What a better time than this to demonstrate that they have the capacity to take it than to have everybody who is on mandatory quarantine in government facilities and those who are already sick and are getting treated. What better way of rolling UHT than having these people treated at government cost? It shouldn't be. It offers the government facilities the opportunity to collect data, to see how the disease is behaving. It's a learning experience, even for our medics and everybody else. So this is something I believe the government should shoulder. There shouldn't be much debate about it.
Okay, and obviously there's the question about people arrested within curfew hours or arrested maybe engaging in what is not lawful at the moment. What do you think should happen? Because currently they're being taken to mandatory quarantine at their own costs.
That is abuse of power. Taking people unnecessarily to mandatory quarantine. For those who the state fears may be infected, they can be detained momentarily for testing and then released. If they need to go through the justice system because of breaking the law, let them go through the justice system. But you can't place people on quarantine. This is extrajudicial punishment. In other words, punishing them outside the law. And it is not right.
But how do you reconcile that with the call? Of course, we've had voices from the government and including the president himself saying that if you are caught, for instance, at a pub or at the wrong time during curfew, then you'll be taken to that mandatory quarantine. How do you reconcile the public good versus the individual rights?
That is where I am saying I have no problem. Under the Health Act, the minister has the powers and therefore the government has the leeway. You can be detained temporarily for testing. But it is not necessary to detain everybody for 14 days.
Right.
Especially if the contagion is not such that you're thinking everybody in the country has coronavirus. Test them, release them, or take them through the judicial system where they can be punished, they can be fined. But when you take them to mandatory quarantine, then the issue of who is going to pay, because if it was jail, they wouldn't be paying. They would be state guests, isn't it?
Right.
And then you also do not know the means of those people. So these are necessary complications. But I do appreciate that the government wants people to cooperate, but being detained momentarily, the same way you are detained in police custody pending being taken to court, or if they have to be quarantined, is it possible, depending on the circumstances, to quarantine people in their houses where the local administration and the Nyumba Kumi can ensure that this is being observed? I do not know. It's something we have not faced, but you cannot just decree mandatory quarantine for everybody unnecessarily and then ask them,
Okay, all right. Let's speak about the county preparedness, because several statements that come from the Council of Governors would indicate there are still very many challenges that counties are facing. We've seen some initiatives at different counties. For instance, Kitui coming up with masks. They say that they have a capacity of 30,000 every day. We have seen some initiatives at the coast, that is in Mombasa, where the governor has come up with some public spraying of I don't know how to call it, but that's the best term for now. But what do you make of the preparedness that we have so far, despite the shortage in terms of specialized equipment in these counties?
I think we single out 3 counties. That is Mombasa, Murang'a, and Kitui. There may be others, but I'm citing the ones that have come to my notice. Mombasa, the governor has been proactive. And I remember even tweeting quite early on and telling him he's ahead of the pack. The public disinfecting spray is something good. They are distributing masks. He has plans to feed the people. Murang'a, the governor also started with distribution of free masks. Water, both Murang'a and Mombasa are giving free water for the next 3 months. And that is very commendable. Kitui is ahead of everybody, especially where the making of PPEs come in, protective masks and equipment for the doctors. Right. I think this is really very commendable, and they are leading the way, and other counties should emulate. Yeah.
I wonder what is happening in your home county. Of course, we have seen some initiatives there. Have you been keen to observe?
I've been in touch, and we had a problem in my home county even before the advent of Corona. Following the en masse sacking of health professionals there, the health services have almost grinded to a halt. And every time I hear the governor of Embu complaining of the load of patients from Kirinyaga on to Embu County. So with Corona, that's an added problem, which means that the normal cases that have not been attended, the everyday cases, are still piling up. So whatever initiatives that will be done under Corona without addressing the initial problem may not completely solve the problems of that county. Yeah.
Right, and of course,
and it's not only Kirinyaga. There was also Laikipia that sacked its medical workers, but I do not know what is happening in Laikipia. Yeah. Okay. I'm thinking that for counties that had sacked their health workers, now that they are rehiring, it's time to rethink. And I think here also the national government can help. This is the time they should rethink of getting back all the health professionals who could be of use in the fight against the pandemic and fight against disease generally. Yeah.
Of course, yesterday we spoke to the governor of Kirinyaga, Anne Mumbi, and she said that the sacking of those doctors was as per law, but of course that continues. So let's speak about the situation with the legislature and with the challenges that they are facing, that only 53 people can sit in parliament. Earlier on, I believe it was earlier in April, there were several calls of people accusing them of deserting Kenyans. Do you think it has done what is necessary within its power and ability at the moment?
Initially, they deserted. After more than a month, they are back. That is good. Better late than never. I am told by the members of parliament I'm in touch with that apart from the 53 in the chamber, they have arrangements with others sitting outside in a tent.
Okay.
And even the ones in a tent can speak. So it's social distancing. Initially, I was worried because if you bar some of the members, will those deliberations be legitimate? But from what I understand, and I cannot speak for them, there are arrangements for people to be out in the tent.
But what more can they do at such times?
I think they really must come up with measures. They should also examine what the government is doing, whether it is adequate. I feel that for one, we should have directed some support to people who are already desperate, people who earn daily wages. The moment the slowdown started of the economy, these people were out of job. And being people who have no accumulation, they were already hungry. We are collecting money for the pandemic, but we have not seen any outreach to the groups who may need relief, except, of course, for the cash transfers that the government has already initiated. So we need to have teams that can not only map out, but also ensure that those who are in need are catered for.
Right. And let's speak about the government tells us that they'll lose at least 172 billion shillings because of the tax measures that have been implemented and that have been passed by Parliament now. But also the KRA is reported that it might lose up to 230 billion shillings in revenue. With all these interventions, how far can they take us, and what do we do looking forward to survive the tough economic times that are ahead of us?
One of the things that comes to mind, KRA is losing 230 billion. We lose 1/3 of our budget to corruption every year. So KRA is losing less than we lose to corruption.
Right.
This is the time to up our game in safeguarding public resources, in ensuring that the money we have is used efficiently. Let the measures the government is applying not be an opportunity for those who are hell-bent on enriching themselves from public coffers. So we really must up our game. As we suffer loss of revenue because of the slowed down productivity, let us up our game in safeguarding public resources. That is one way we can balance. And let us also imagine life post the pandemic. Let us see how to return to normalcy with safety measures in place. So these are the things we must, what we normally call in mitigating measures. We must mitigate the effect of this corona pandemic, not surrender to it. And one way we could also increase productivity is by supporting the farmers. Now we are having rains which are causing havoc in some parts of the country. We should also be setting aside some money and focusing on agriculture, supporting the farmers so that we do not have the pandemic and then have hunger. And if you invest in agriculture, you balance the loss of productivity in some areas and in industry and other areas can be balanced by increased productivity in agriculture.
Right. And so you talk about important matters that is to do with ensuring that we're able to deal with corruption at such times when a lot of things have been downscaled. Of course, the judiciary is trying to do as much as it can to continue operating even though it's remotely. How do you ensure that you're able to continue voicing concerns when it comes to accountability and ensure that this pandemic is not used against the public?
Parliament has not ceased to be the people's watchdog. Parliament must up its game. But also, we as citizens, as civil society, must also continue pointing out where there are ills. So together, participating as citizens of this country, we can demand and ensure that we hold the bar high on issues of accountability.
Right.
We need right now, I was wondering who in Parliament will ask the question, how the government is intending to spend the money reallocated to fight the coronavirus.
Did you get an answer?
I have seen them. No. You see, I'm not a member of Parliament. I'm just wishing somebody can ask for how the amount is being used. But the government, which has adopted, I must commend them for adopting an unprecedented measure of openness in handling the pandemic, where we have daily briefings. I think that we deserve in these daily briefings for the Minister of Health maybe to tell us how the response money is going to be used, either him or maybe when the president does his briefings, which are also becoming a regular feature and which we commend.
Right.
We need to be briefed, and they need to be very careful how they allocate that money. I think it is an opportunity also to ensure that all the county hospitals have ability to respond to the common ailments in that county. It is an opportunity to re-examine our health system. I have seen the Ghanaian president has said they are going to build 86 hospitals in their districts. So this idea is not foreign, that realizing we have a weak health system and that we as Kenyans, from the mightiest to the least, we have to rely on that system. This is a time to ensure that we improve our health services.
Right.
It's a time to uphold institutions like NHIF, like not NHIF, yes, NHIF and KEMSA to ensure that they respond to our needs.
Okay.
So I see losses and opportunities, challenges and opportunities in our fight against the pandemic.
Right, and that's a very positive note. I wish we had more time to engage on this, but you put it correctly that we have challenges but also opportunities, and we will keep speaking to you, speaking with you, Honorable Martha Karua. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on Daybreak.
Asante, and allow me to commend Kenyans because a majority of Kenyans have actually come together to support the fight against the pandemic. It's just to encourage us that we are in this together. Let us do whatever we can.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Honorable Martha Karua. She is the party leader of NARC Kenya, but also former presidential candidate. And she told me once upon a time that she's also a future presidential candidate, so it's important to add that. So she's been speaking to us from Nairobi. And Fred Okango, you said that going forward, post-COVID-19, it will be business unusual. The new normal is something that we must be ready to embrace if we are to manage our resources for sustainability. Of course, Fred Okango watching Daybreak. So thank you so much for taking time to watch since 6 o'clock until now. We do this again some other time, but Zinzi Kibeku will be back at 9 o'clock with the latest in the world of news. But stay tuned to Citizen TV for the best of programming in the industry. My name is Sam Gituku. See you again.